It's an honor to be here in this very wonderful yeshiva school, especially in the beginning of the year. It's interesting, I see from my good friends, the Weiss family, we actually recently, a couple months ago, we had the zchus to travel to Belarus to visit the kever of the Chafetz Chaim. And it's not so easy to get to Belarus. It used to be. To get to Belarus, you needed a special visa. So I'm sure you know what a passport is, but it's not good enough to have a passport. You need a visa. So a little while ago, to get a visa to go to Belarus, you just got an app and you applied, and they sort of registered your passport number to allow you to enter the country. But recently, in order to get into Belarus, Belarus is between Lithuania and Russia. You need to actually go down to Washington and get a formal visa where you go to the embassy and they take your passport and they put this hard paper on it and they stamp it and they seal it, and now you're allowed to get into Belarus. So if you live in California and you needed a visa, you need to overnight your passport to New York. It's a whole ordeal. But anyway, it was worth it. And preparing to go to the Chafetz Chaim, I did a lot of preparation about the life of the Chafetz Chaim. And you think about the Chafetz Chaim, you figure, I don't know, he was probably born holding on to a Gemara in his hand. He probably was born a very big tzaddik. But when you learn about the life of the Chafetz Chaim, you realize the Chafetz Chaim had to overcome a lot of struggles to become the Chafetz Chaim. He wasn't born the Chafetz Chaim. Actually, the Chafetz Chaim was an orphan. And as a young boy, he was sent to a shul in Vilna to learn. And in Vilna, there was a very bright man there who had not a yeshiva, but something called a seminar. And the seminar was an institution of education for the Haskalah movement. The Haskalah movement was an enlightenment movement. And without getting into too many details, this was not a traditional approach to Yiddishkeit. And the head of this seminar was not a Shomer Torah mitzvahs. And he was always lurking, trying to see if he could snatch a young boy out of the yeshiva and bring him to the seminar and educate him in more modern values so he wouldn't become a Shomer Torah mitzvahs. And he was always lurking in the shul in Vilna, and he sees a very bright kid. His name was Yisrael Meir. And Yisrael Meir was an orphan, so he figured he's easy prey to try to persuade him to come to the seminar. So he strikes up a conversation with Yisrael Meir, and he's talking to him about Torah and about science and about other things, and he feels he's getting somewhere. He feels, he might be able to persuade Yisrael Meir to leave the Beis Medrash and to come to the seminar. And day after day, this man would try to persuade this little boy, he wasn't so little, he was a teenager, to leave the yeshiva and to come to the seminar. And one day, a water carrier came over to Yisrael Meir, and he said, "What are you doing? Why are you talking to this man?" By the way, this man's name was Adam HaKohen Levinson, who is the only person who the Chafetz Chaim later in life would say about him, Yemach Shemai. Why are you talking to this guy Levinson? He doesn't keep kosher even. His only mission is to try to persuade you to leave the yeshiva. Don't talk to him. And it's interesting, the Chafetz Chaim didn't say, okay, I'm not going to believe what this man is telling me, I'm not going to believe Lashon Hara. The Chafetz Chaim was very concerned, so he ran out of Vilna and he never came back from Vilna because of this report of the water carrier. And the Chafetz Chaim would say his whole life that the water carrier of Vilna saved him, saved the Mishnah Brura, saved Sefer Chafetz Chaim, and saved Klal Yisrael. But if you think about it, the Chafetz Chaim almost didn't make it. He almost fell into the trap of this guy Levinson. Baruch Hashem, he overcame that challenge. But, it reminds us that in this world, we always have challenges. Nothing is smooth sailing. Every step in life, we have to overcome challenges. And one day, we'll look back very proudly that if we overcome our challenges, we'll say we are who we are today because of the decisions that we made. I remember when I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, actually, I sent my first son, he actually has an older brother, but my son Meir went to learn this week in Eretz Yisrael. And I'll tell you the truth, it was very hard for me. I really miss him. And usually I don't look at my phone before davening. That's my approach. You know, until I finish davening and learning in the morning, I don't look at my phone. But I couldn't do that today because I'm in LA. So LA, I'm 3 hours ahead of New York. And New York is 7 hours ahead of Eretz Yisrael. And my son is 10 hours ahead of me. So I wanted to be able to, wish him a good Shabbos. So he called me this morning. It was so nice to see him in Eretz Yisrael. But I'm thinking back 25 years ago when I was learning in Eretz Yisrael. I remember one of the first shmuzin that I heard when I was in Eretz Yisrael from a Rebbe, Rabbi Binyamin Luban. He said over a very powerful shmuz. The Gemara tells us, and Rashi brings us down, that when Bilam was standing on the top of the mountain, he was looking into Eretz Yisrael, he saw at the corner of Eretz Yisrael in a very successful position were the descendants of Yisro. Remember Yisro? Yisro was the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the first ger. And Yisro's children were the leaders of the Jewish people, and they were actually the heads of the Sanhedrin in the Beis HaMikdash. The Sanhedrin had an office in the Beis HaMikdash, and the heads of the Sanhedrin were the children of Yisro. And Bilam said, I can't believe it. The children of Yisro are so holy. They're so important for Klal Yisrael. Just the other day, me and Yisro were sitting at the same table. And we were together. And now I'm a Rasha, and I'm a terrible, evil, wicked person, and Yisro and his descendants are tzaddikim. I don't understand how that happened. We were just together a few days ago. Now, does anybody remember where was Bilam together with Yisro? When were they ever together at the same table? So the Gemara says that when Parai didn't know what to do with the Jewish people, he had a Jewish problem, he called in 3 advisors. Do you remember who they were? He called in Bilam, he called in Yisro, and he called in Eiv. And Yisro said, don't touch them, don't harm him. Anyone who harms the Jewish people, they're jeopardizing their life, they're the beloved children of Hashem. And Bilam said, kill them, destroy them, bathe in their blood. And Eiv just sat there quietly. And the Gemara says, Eiv, for sitting there quietly, was punished. Eiv was punished with great punishment. He should have spoken up. Bilam who advised Parah to kill the Jews, Bilam was killed. And Yisro, who advised Parah not to harm us, he was rewarded that his descendants for all time are the heads of the Sanhedrin. So Bilam said, I don't understand. Me and him yesterday, we were sitting at this table. We were together. And now today, look how far apart we are. I'm the biggest Rasha, and his children are very righteous. The question is, I don't understand. What couldn't Bilam get? What didn't he understand? What was he surprised about? Of course, him and Yisro sat at the same table. But that's because at that time, they were on the same Bezdin. They were on the same court. But Bilam made a bad decision, and he advised that Parah should kill us. And Yisro made a good decision. So what didn't he understand? Of course he's a wicked person, and Yisro and his descendants are righteous. Because Yisro took the right path in life, and Bilam took the wrong path in life. What did Bilam not understand? And our Rebbe brought out that what he didn't understand was he remembered very well they were sitting at the same table. And at the time when Paro said, what should I do with the Jewish people? It entered Bilam's mind, maybe I should do the right thing and advise Paro not to harm us. And it entered Yisro's mind, maybe I should try to curry favor with Paro and I should advise him to kill us. And they were both struggling at that time. And Bilam made the wrong decision. And Yisro made the right decision. And that put them on completely different trajectories in life. Because of that decision that Bilam made, it led him to a path of being so wicked. And because of that decision that Yisro made, it forever and ever established his family as Talmidei Chachamim. And Bilam couldn't understand it. We were together in the same classroom. We were sitting next to each other. From one decision in life, it could make such an impact. It could change the course of a person's future forever. That's something Bilam didn't understand. But that's something that we all have to try to understand. That when we come to school every day, we have to make decisions. Sometimes those decisions seem very minor to us. You know, how much should I be devoted to my studies? How much should I try to improve my character? How much should I try to how hard should I try to do mitzvahs? And sometimes we think these are minor decisions, but the small little decisions that you make now when you're, how old are you? 12, 13, 14 years old, those little decisions will change the course of the rest of your life and your children and your grandchildren. And you know, you come to school in the morning, you think, I'm just coming to school. No, you're not just coming to school. How you come to school in the morning is how you're going to grow up to be, what your family is going to be like, and what your future is going to be like. There's a very interesting mitzvah at the end of this week's parsha. Do you know the halacha? Let's say you're walking down the street, and you see in the street a dead body. And the question, who killed this body? And there's a big fight because it's just there in between two cities. And one city says, no, it's closer to your city. And the other city says, no, it's closer to your city. So the Torah says Bezdin has to come and they're going to measure which city is closest to this person. And whichever city is closest, that city is responsible. So they measure. And once they determine which city is closest, the Bezdin of that city comes and they wash their hands. And they say, no, it's not our fault. We didn't kill him. So the Gemara asks, well, does anybody actually think the Bezdin killed this guy? Why would anybody think the Bezdin killed this guy? So the Gemara says something very interesting. No, nobody thinks the Bezdin killed the guy. The Gemara says, you see, Bezdin has to make the following declaration. We never had this guy in our house and let him just leave. Any guest we have, we're going to escort him 4 amos, and only then we'll let them leave our house. The Gemara says from here we see a very important mitzvah, that when you invite a guest to your house, you can't just feed them, you can't just give them to drink, you need to escort them. You know about this mitzvah? Levaya, escorting. Right? Hachnasas orchim is Eishel, Aleph, Achila, Shin, Shasiya, Lamed, Levaya. You got to escort a guest. In other words, you imagine you had a guest, you give them all kinds of good food, you give them the best drinks, and now the meal is over, you say, bye, see you later, adios amigo, catch you later. No, that's not good enough. It's not good enough. You have to walk them 4 amos. If you don't walk them 4 amos, you're not makayim the mitzvah of hachnasas orchim properly. 4 amos is about 8 feet. 8 feet out of your door. Okay, so the question is, what is this mitzvah? Why do you need to escort someone 8 feet? Because the Gemara implies that if you escort someone 8 feet, they will never be harmed when they leave your house. Somehow when you escort them 8 feet, they will not be harmed. It gives them protection. How does walking a guy 8 feet give someone protection? Are there any bad neighborhoods here in LA? Yeah. What is it called? Downtown. Okay, so here it is. The guy comes to your house to eat in Hancock Park, or wherever, or in, where else do you come from? Pico. Hancock Park, La Brea, right? Pico. They're in a safe neighborhood. And now they have to go home, and the only way they could get home is if they walk through downtown. So you're telling me that if I walk them 4 cubits, 4 amos out of my house, then they'll be protected in downtown? And if I don't walk them 4 amos in Hancock Park, they won't be protected in downtown? What are my 4 cubits of walking them here in a safe neighborhood? How is that going to protect them in an unsafe neighborhood? There's an amazing Marsha. Marsha is one of the important commentaries on the Gemara. The Marsha says that if you walk someone 4 cubits, 4 amos, you know what you're doing? You're showing that you want this person to be protected. Now you don't have time to walk him down past downtown. You don't have 3 extra hours, but you do have 3 seconds. By walking them 4 amos, you're showing it's your ratzon, it's your will to protect this guy. Once Hashem sees that it's your ratzon, it's your will to protect him, Hashem will protect him. Why? It's called Ritzon Yereav Yaaseh. Hashem will do the will of those who fear him. So as long as you take 4 steps and you show Hashem that you want this person to be protected, Hashem says, great, you want him to be protected, I'll do the rest of the job. And I think there's a very important message over here. In life, Hashem does not expect us to jump to the moon, to rise all the way up to the sky. All he wants us to do is give it a few good steps. Try a little bit. Try a little bit more. We could always put in a little bit of more effort, a little bit of more concentration, a little bit more energy into the mitzvah. And if you put a few extra steps into it, Hashem will take us the rest of the way there. That is how Hashem operates. If we put our best foot forward, we give it a little extra effort, Hashem will give us tremendous siyata d'shmaya. So it's the beginning of the school year, and sometimes it's a little overwhelming, maybe, what grade is this? 6, 7, and 8. Yeah, so 6 is not like 5th, and 7th is not like 6th, and 8th is not like 7th. You'll see. You just try a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, Hashem's going to help you out, and you're going to be, Be'ezus Hashem, very successful. I wish you all a ksiva uchsima tova. Thank you very much for hosting me. Bracha v'atzlacha.